Welcome to the Evolution Partners podcast, where I talk with the world's leading thinkers, planners, and doers who are helping to build great companies in their own way. We learn how the work they're doing is creating an impact and get to know a little bit more about them and what makes them tick. This episode is brought to you by Evolution Partners, where we help leaders to confidently build enduring great companies through our proven, structured strategic planning process that ensures you build and execute the right plan. Check us out at evolutionpartners.com.au. Also, you can check out our books, Made to Thrive, outlining how to be a great CEO, Onboarded, about making your new hires more effective, faster, and bigger isn't better, better is better, about building a better business. My guest today is Hara Priya Kannan, Chief Data Scientist at the Demographics Group, the firm led by Australia's best-known demographer, Bernard Salt, whose now famous $22 smashed avocado comment sparked a national conversation about millennials spending and housing affordability. Hari has written or writes regular columns for The Australian and is a sought-after speaker on how population, migration, ageing and generational change are transforming the workforce and the economy. Hari, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me.
Perhaps, well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Perhaps you could start off and explain what is demography.
Demography, I think it's just gossip. So it's just people who are looking at statistics and numbers, talking about who's moving into a suburb, what are they earning, when are they getting married, are they having enough babies? So it's all these sort of things, but it's put into a bigger picture and trying to understand how these changes matter for our economy and for our business and for our nation.
Okay, I haven't heard that and I love that description. It's just gossip. So why do you think that, to just draw on that a little bit, why do you think that demography should matter to entrepreneurs and business owners, or why should they at least pay attention to the information and the gossip that comes out of it?
So, what demography does is it explains why things are happening the certain way they are. So, whether it's customer trends or workforce trends, today we have a big hiring challenge, and it's also a challenge to retain talent for many businesses. By understanding what's causing these, that's where demography comes in. It helps us understand these changes. And it not only helps us get a grip of what's happening right now, but it helps us to plan for the future. Especially in a country like Australia, we are very data rich. We have lots of access to good quality information and very reliable information. And by paying attention to these small details, we might be able to come up with our strategies and influence what's happening in our business and forecast our customer behaviors accordingly. And I think that is very essential for the successes of businesses going forward. It helps us understand our society. We are becoming more multicultural. We are aging. We have many generations now. So it's not only affecting the consumer trends, but it's also a very multi generational workforce. And these are trends that's never been seen before in history. So that's why demography is very important for everyone.
Excellent. So over the next decade, which is probably the time horizon, or the longest time horizon that entrepreneurs and business owners would consider. So over the next decade, what do you think is the biggest forces that are shaping Australia's economy, and how do you think that they could affect business owners directly?
Australia's population is growing, so in the next 10 years, we'll be adding about 3.5 million people to our population base, and that's a very big growth. But what's happening is it's changing shape. We're no longer growing because of births. We're growing because of movement. Over 80% of our population growth comes from overseas migration. And that means our economy is powered by people who choose to be here. It's students, skilled workers, visitors who fill our temporary jobs. These are people who rent our homes, buy goods and services, who are directly contributing to the economy. But at the same time, the other force that we are seeing is that we're aging rapidly. By 2034, nearly 1 in 5 Australians will be over the age of 65. So even with migration, our working age pool is shrinking. And for business owners, this means two things. Finding workers will get harder, but at the same time, understanding your new customers is also going to get very harder because we are very multicultural. There's lots of generation. There are different values that are driving consumer behaviors, and that will matter more than ever now. So in short, Australia's next decade of growth is a story of churn, people arriving, leaving, moving, and businesses that adapt fastest to this churn will thrive.
And so, uh, if you're in a business where you serve a particular demographic, you need to consider the evolving and continually evolving multicultural aspect of that. A, and then B, simply more people over the age of 60.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, you put it very well. Because when you look at our population, we are the most multicultural nation with a sizable population. Almost 30% of our population is born overseas, and about 50% of our population has a parent that's born overseas. So Australia is very multicultural in its structure. But what's changing is the nationality of the migrants. So, what's been happening, what's changed over the last 30 years is we are moving from a more Anglo Saxon migrant base to a more Asian, South American, African migrant base. And this will continue to happen because most countries like the UK or Italy, France, Greece, the US, all these countries are also aging on a similar scale to Australia. So they don't have enough young people that they can lose to other countries. So that's why we are seeing migrants come from countries where there is a demographic dividend of younger workers, which is currently in Asia. And that's why we're seeing more Indian, Chinese, Filipino, Malaysian, Colombian migrants who are rising rapidly in Australia.
Anecdotally, in my observation, we've seen clients say to us that when hiring people, there has been significant changes recently where perhaps post COVID, a few years ago, there was only 4 or 5 or 6 people applying for a job, whereas now they could have 100 people applying for the same job. And this is, I guess, the lived experience as to why we need to really pay attention to what are these major changes, because these things make one's job, without a pun, much harder. So do you think that we're entering a permanent area of labour scarcity, in complete contrast to my previous comment? But there's certainly been changes. So do you think we're entering a permanent area of labour scarcity, or do you think that it's cyclical? And also, which areas or regions do you think are most impacted?
Labor shortages were always going to happen in Australia, and they're built into the way we grew. We had a huge baby boom in the decades after the World War II, and that created a wave of people entering the workforce all at once through the 70s, 80s, and the 90s. But since then, fertility rates have been falling consistently. So there has never been the same mass entry of young workers that has never been repeated after the baby boomers. And now those baby boomers, who are the largest or who were the largest working generation in our history, are retiring en masse. And because the smaller generations are following them, there simply aren't enough people to replace them. So this isn't just a short-term issue or a COVID hangover. If anything, COVID acted as a catalyst in this process. This was always going to happen. It just happened to us a bit faster, and it's simple demographic math when you look at it. Even with migration, even if it stays high, the age structure of Australia's population means we'll be managing labor scarcity for a very long time. And recently, the ABS released their fertility rate data in their births edition, and in 2024 it was 1.48, which has been the lowest ever recorded in Australian history. So we are talking about labor shortages for a long time. So what this will mean for businesses, especially health and care and construction, educational services. All these skills are under a really lot of pressure. And regional Australia faces double a challenge because they can't attract enough of this newly entering migrant workforce, which is supposed to offset some of those challenges. So we are not entering competition just within Australia for talent. We are competing globally. And that means every business, regardless of their size, whether it's a small company or a huge organization, they need to think about their talent strategy in the same way they think about their customer strategy. So, because they're both equally important now.
As I understand it, the birth replacement rate, the fertility rate, I guess for context, the number 2 as a fertility rate, it sustains a population. So that means 1 for each parent. Numbers
Okay.
above 2 grow a population and numbers below 2 lead to decline. So we have gone, I think we were just around 2 in about 2010. And now I think that we've gone to about, as you mentioned, 1.48 births in 2024. So well below. First of all, what happens in that scenario when we don't maintain, because we're supplementing that with immigration to try to maintain prosperity, I suppose. But what happens if a country, because as I understand it, many of the Western countries have the same type of fertility challenges. What happens if you don't maintain that replacement rate of 2?
So what happens is eventually you stop having a natural increase to your population. So your population increase will be entirely dependent on migration, which is not the ideal scenario. If you look at Australia's population projections, so post these or later in the later half of the century, there is a natural decrease rather than a natural increase. The way that demographic change works is it works on a lag. So we'll feel the impact of this a decade from now when smaller birth cohorts become smaller graduating classes and eventually a smaller workforce. That means our dependence on migration will be very high. And if you look at some countries like Japan, their population is not increasing anymore, it's decreasing. But that's a country that's thriving on high tech manufacturing, so they're
Yeah.
able to sustain their economy. But I don't think that might be the same case for Australia because our economy is still very resources based. When we run out of resources and when we run out of human capital in the longer term, that's not a very good outlook for us to have.
So as a society, if we didn't supplant it or supplement it with immigration, there'd be a lower tax base. We'd be supporting an older population. We wouldn't be able to maintain the infrastructure to a acceptable level, and there'd be less demand for goods and services. It sounds like you're kind of entering somewhat of a negative spiral.
Yeah, and it will affect every industry because it doesn't just mean that we are having a smaller workforce. It means there will be fewer first home buyers. So what happens to the property market when you stop having the demand? There will be slower domestic demand for any kinds of goods and services unless we offset it with migration and productivity gains. And this is why it matters, not just to fill the jobs that we have today, but for tomorrow's workforce pipeline. So if we get more younger people, that gives us more hope of increasing our population through natural increase. So we need to rethink that aspect too. We need to foster or family formation for younger people. We need to try and come up with schemes that support young people to buy a house and have a baby. Because in today's economy, that seems to be a very big challenge. And that's why people put it away until much later in their lives. So there needs to be some policy changes that helps both these aspects.
The challenge is when people put it away for later in their lives, the chance of having a baby, I think, reduces the older one gets. So quite a complicated and challenging situation for the government to resolve, no doubt. So you've spoken before about how Gen Z and millennials see work and career differently to other cohorts in the population. What is the mindset difference that leaders should understand between what they may be used to or what their cohort, be it Gen X or baby boomer or whatever it might be, and how they deal with Gen X, Z, and millennials? What's the difference in mindset, do you think?
So the main thing that we need to understand is younger generations aren't really less ambitious as they perceive to be. They are ambitious differently, and they grew up through uncertainty, through financial crises. They must have seen parents who have been affected by the recession and other economic factors that played in. They're growing up with climate anxiety and AI disruption, and they have so much of information all around them, and they need to navigate all of these things side by side. So they see work as something that should add meaning to their life and not just money. So for them, loyalty comes from alignment and not from a hierarchical structure, which we have seen in the past. So they're looking for autonomy, they're looking for flexibility and purpose, not necessarily a corner office. You might not meet a lot of young people saying that that's the kind of work life that they want. They want to work smart, they need authenticity in their work. And for business leaders, it's about meeting them where they are through transparency, through trust, and through culture, rather than assuming that they'll follow the same career patterns older generations did. And the other factor that we need to think about is because there's a lot of job mobility that's going on right now, because there's a shortage of workers, they're spoiled for choice. So at the end of the day, if your company values is not aligning with the values of the younger generation, so whether it's being more climate responsible or being cruelty free, and these are some of the, when you see customer alignments in younger generations, they seem to follow this pattern. So if at the end of the day, your company is not working for a good cause, there is a chance that retaining younger employees will become a challenging aspect for that business.
Sometimes I just think to myself, I wonder if it's older people have always complained about younger people in the workforce. It's just now that there's a more effective mechanism through social media for it to be communicated on from both parties. Just think, is it just always the way that the older people are in their career? They're in a perhaps a more focused money earning stage of their career, and younger people are still finding their way or looking for autonomy and freedom. Any reaction to that?
There definitely is a change. And I think when Gen Z gets to that stage in their careers where baby boomers are now, they are eventually going to complain about Gen Alpha and Beta and whoever is to follow them. But at the end of the day, if you see that a young person today has more job titles than baby boomers ever did. So the whole tradition of staying in a single workplace and, the long service, staying in a company for 20 or 30 years, that's not how the younger generations view their workplace as. So they're multi-skillers and they're fast learners because they've grown up with more technology than other generations had access to. They are doing more side hustles, whether it's having a very serious corporate job and in the weekends I'm an influencer or doing something on social media or volunteering. It might be anything. So they want to contribute creatively and they want to see quick results. So it's also, I think, the lack of patience that younger generations have because they've had easy access to most things. They've never had to wait for anything growing up, um, including myself. I have very less patience compared to how my grandfather or my father has. So I can see that difference in myself. That is what is changing, in my opinion. And they also prioritize balance because they've seen burnout up close. They've seen older generations who work for security. But today's younger generations want to work towards both financial security as well as their mental health being a big aspect of their work life.
Yeah. You mentioned before, I mean, we're all human. Okay. And I'm sure that many of the older people today can, if they can just hang in there and survive long enough, they cannot wait for the day where they say, I told you so to the Gen Zers. But we're all human and we're all a product somewhat of our circumstance. And as you mentioned earlier, I think the phrase that you said was spoilt for choice. And so today's younger generations are spoiled for choice because there are a lot of opportunities, there are a lot of jobs, a lot of mobility. So, in the context of that, the employees, the potential candidates being spoiled for choice, how do you think that companies, especially probably owner led companies, can design roles or cultures or incentives that attract and retain younger workers who are thinking more about work life balance in such a different manner, perhaps?
I think owner-led businesses have a real advantage because they can be very human. And because Gen Z loves authenticity, small or mid-market firms can offer that far better than any corporate. They can show people the impact of their work, involve them in decisions, and celebrate their progresses very quickly. And flexibility is the key, but so is growth. So in smaller firms, if the firm is able to show that you can grow in your career, that is the biggest thing that's going to matter to a young worker. So whether it's creating promotions or small steps that show development every 6 to 12 months, offer mentorship, both traditional and reverse mentoring, to create a very um, strong and rigid learning loop between the generations. I'd like to add my own experience here. So
Mm.
my firm is a very small firm. We have 5 employees. I started as an entry level data analyst about 6 years ago, and today I was able to grow into a writer and a speaker. And these are things that happened to me because of the mentorship from my seniors, from Bernard, from Simon, who are also speakers. All my co-workers have always been supportive of every single step I have taken. They call me out on social media, whether it's on LinkedIn, on Instagram. The promotion happens. They promote me equally as to how they promote themselves. So that is the real value that I'm seeing, that smaller firms can be doing a much better job compared to corporates.
When you go out for company events with just the five of you, does anyone ever say, look, just don't order the smashed avocado?
No, never.
I just thought I'd ask. I'm wondering business about business entry and exit rates, and in particular entrepreneurship in Australia. I'm quite curious how the government can uh, not promote, but and not even encourage, but stimulate, whether they know it or not, entrepreneurship. And a certain number of firms are always destined to be one person firms. Some will grow to be small, some will grow larger. I think in my research from Germany, there's there's a middle class called the Mittelstand, and these are the engine of the economy. And there's also, as I understand it, a strong body of evidence that a large portion of GDP comes from mid-market firms. That's not the question. It's about business entry and exit rates, that there are lots of startups, but fewer firms that make it beyond that to actually employ staff. Do you think that we're becoming a nation of freelancers? Because I think that these numbers are increasing rather than entrepreneurs who actually build teams.
Yes, we are shifting from entrepreneurs to solopreneurs. Business entries are high, but most of that growth is in 1% businesses, whether it's consultants, it could be creators, online sellers, ADs. These are the kinds of roles that are setting up businesses now. So the share of firms that employ staff has actually fallen from about 13% to 11% over the last 2 decades. And that reflects both opportunity and risk because technology has made it easier than ever before to start something. But the real challenge is scaling the business. So rising labor costs and all the other economic factors are making people think twice before hiring. So it's not, we're not short of an enterprise, but we're short of employers. And that is an important shift for the economy. When when you think about what policies we might uh, we might need to stimulate this, I think at the one end we have big corporates that dominate with scale and automation, and other startups are often lean and very agile. Mid-sized businesses, they face the same labor challenges as any other bigger firm, but they might often not have the HR depth or government incentives to manage them. Migration policy is also, it also tends to either favor very high skilled visa categories, or it favors roles that are in immediate shortage, like health and care, for example. Often, what happens is mid sized businesses lose out on getting the workforce. And that's why we are seeing the whole trend of people being very reluctant to hire or
Mm.
just manage the business themselves, and maybe even reluctant to scale up. Or even if they wanted to scale up, there's just a lot of challenges, and navigating this whole system feels more riskier than trying to dip your leg into it.
Yeah, and the question, I think that many people, irrespective of their demographic, their cohort, are ambitious. Many people want to have a better life, and we should encourage people to have a better life. I think the question is the ratio of the risk to undertake a venture outweighed by the, let's say, the burden that is placed from a regulatory or a tax or simply just the problems that are created perhaps by government along the way. To be fair, I think often unintentional. I think that they put some of these things in place in order to make the world a better place, but it can just seem a bit too hard perhaps sometimes. Do you think that there are any hidden demographic or policy reasons that mid-market growth seems harder than it used to be? Because it seems like it's getting harder, and maybe that's just that's a biased opinion, but any thoughts on that?
So I agree with everything you've just said. And I agree that it's not ambition that's missing, it's the scaffolding to support the growth that has eroded over the years. And policy sets the rhythm of growth. So when you look at migration, we bring in people because we need people right now. But what's happening is there's a mismatch of how these people who eventually enter our country are placed into their roles, so their right are matched to their skills. So they are not, I think, trained with purpose. So right now we are great at importing skills, but slower at converting them into long-term capability. So with our policy itself, I think our migration system, it's very strategic, and yes, we do have one of the best systems, but we are not very reactive. We are not very strategic. We are just reacting to something. So our skill, so the way the skills migration works is the government comes up with a shortage of skills,
Mm,
and then you apply for it. Every financial year this keeps changing, but if I apply for my visa this financial year, I might get my visa maybe in the next one or the year after. That's how long the processing takes. So
mm.
there's always a lag in between what we need when it is delivered. So in this difficult scenario, it's when it's difficult for us to react to the issues that are happening to us, it becomes even more challenging for us to anticipate and try to address some of the challenges that we might face in the future. So I think there needs to be a more efficient way in how these skills are delivered, especially to smaller firms and to regional Australia, very importantly.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's some work to be done there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think simplification matters, faster visa processing, better recognition of on the job learning, incentives for hiring, and local training. These are all things that could make a difference. And I think both the government and the firm itself needs to try and understand and solve these issues.
Yeah. a collaborative approach, perhaps, because I guess on this side of the fence, it does feel like politicians are living in their own bubble and they don't really get a lot of actual feedback. So, what role do you think that government regulation and policy, from immigration to training and the laws, play in shaping that environment? But moreover, to your previous points, what do you think can be done to improve it?
So what we have is we have many people, that is the migrant utilization. There is data to show that we do bring in the skilled workers, but their skills don't get recognized. And when you look at the hiring trends, it's very evident. Most employers want people who have an Australian experience, but we don't have those workers. Then we end up importing those workers, but employers then fail to recognize these workers. So there needs to be something that happens in the middle of all this to make sure that the services are getting delivered very effectively. Could be even getting your skills recognized by a government body, and that could add credibility and value to these workers. I think that could be an essential step that you could take to ensuring that you get people. I've been to conferences where people say that, well, we are an aged care employer, but we have people working in aged care level roles, but their technical qualifications, they might be IT workers or doctors in their country, but here they are working in something that's not only just lower skilled, but it's also completely different from what they have been doing. So that is the challenge here. Then what happens is we don't have enough people to work in our
Yeah.
health and our IT jobs. So we are not actually solving any problems. We're just getting more people. We are not filling jobs effectively. And the whole pattern of recognizing skills needs to be rethought, and somebody needs to come up with a better solution for this.
It sounds like, as an entrepreneur, it sounds like a wonderful opportunity for an environment where people could be trained to meet local levels. I'm not suggesting Australia's levels are better or worse, but I'm only
Mhm.
suggesting that they're different. So
Yeah.
in order to meet local requirements. You also speak on artificial intelligence, and I'm interested in your take on what types of jobs or skill sets will be amplified by AI and what you think might disappear entirely. I realize that no one has a crystal ball, and I realize, especially, in your field, but we do form opinions over time. How should entrepreneurs be thinking and planning their workforce now with the changes that seem to be coming at us quite quickly?
So AI is not replacing people, it's replacing tasks. Uh, the jobs that are purely repetitive or data heavy will shrink, and roles that mix human judgment and creativity and empathy will grow. So I used to be a software engineer. So my take on this is, if you can try and code a task and allow your computer to do that. And today there is more capability because of all the technology that we have around. We are able to try and, I'd say, give machines a chance to do more complex tasks. So when your task is very repetitive, it's very easy to do that.
Yeah.
Somebody can automate it. So the main skill that entrepreneurs need to have is the human judgment. So reacting to different customer bases, creativity, more personalized customer offerings, product offerings, trying to understand your local market, whether they're multicultural or what are their economic capacity, and empathy. So businesses that have a purpose, all these things will help entrepreneurs to really survive and succeed. So these are small changes that enterprises can start making. It's all about personalization. It's all about the ease and the convenience of the service that you're offering and how unique or exotic it is. That also plays a part when you look at all the lifestyle products that's coming out. So I think we are moving to from a more one size fits all kinds of products to products that suits the needs of our evolving population trends. So we can think of AI as our digital apprentice. It takes care of all our grunt work, So the team can focus on strategy, relationships, and innovation. And for entrepreneurs, the key is to blend all these human and machine skills and invest in digital literacy so you can offer a better service and rethink your job design continuously.
I have a 15-year-old son, and he, like probably many people of his age, are a little bit concerned. There are many people who are saying that all jobs will be wiped out by the time he actually makes it through school, and whether he chooses to go to university through university. And so his take was, well, I think I need to become an electrician because there's a boom in electricity to fund data centers, and there won't be any jobs for the people who come out of uni. What would be your advice to him and people of his age?
I think in a way he's spot on, but yeah, so when you look at the roles that are being automated, especially in corporates and bigger companies, it's always the entry level work workers and the tasks that entry level workers do that are getting automated. I think eventually there will come some reforms in the way university education is delivered. So entry level workers are capable to enter into the mid-level roles directly out of university. Maybe there will be changes and there might be a reskilling that happens continuously. I think that is one of the changes that we can anticipate in the future. But when you look at roles that have been replaced by technology, so whether it's secretaries who have completely gone out of the picture. But there are also new jobs like website designer or social media marketing influencers. And all these are new jobs that did not exist, I'd say, 20 or 10 years ago. These are new things that are coming up. So I think where technology takes away a chunk of jobs, it will create opportunities for newer jobs to emerge. And I think for everyone, not just for younger generations, but for everyone who's going to be in the workforce in the longer time, they have to constantly think about keep upgrading their skills as they go. So it's not you learn a skill, you get a university degree, and it's going to help you through the rest of your life. That worked in the past, but I don't think that will work very effectively in the future. That's even for doctors, I would say, because there's so much new technology in medicine that's being invented, and if you don't keep up with that, it's very difficult for you to sustain, even though it's a job that robots can't take over.
I have a quote that I use with clients regularly, and it's from Michelangelo when he was 87 years old, and he says, "I am still learning." We need to keep learning. What is on that topic? What is a book that you would recommend for our audience?
I think, in the light of today's discussion, a book that I recently read was Adapt by Andrea Clark. It's a great read on how we build the human skills that matter the most in a changing world, whether it's communication, resilience, curiosity, and influence. It reminds us that technology evolves, but it's actually our human skills that gives us that edge. And I think it's especially relevant right now because we are navigating through all the demographic shifts and AI, and there's a constant uncertainty about things. So Andrea's book makes a very, very strong case about adaptability, just asn't something to have as a personal trait, but as a real business advantage.
Excellent. We'll put that in the show notes. How can people learn more about you and your business and the good work that you do?
So I think if you go on the demographics group website, which is www.tdgp.com.au, you can learn more about our business, the work we do, and you can also learn about our team. So there's information about all of us there, and you can see our work that's been happening. We're also I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram, and you can follow me there.
Lovely. We'll put that in the show notes as well. What haven't we covered off today that you wanted to cover off?
I think we've pretty much covered everything, and I'm so happy to have this conversation with you.
Thank you, Hari. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did.
If you'd be kind enough to leave a review for the podcast, that'd be really helpful to other like-minded entrepreneurs, and then we can grow our community. If you want to find out more about our guests, head over to evolutionpartners.com.au/podcast, where you can find show notes and other additional reading. Hope to see you back next week. Until then, keep thriving.